Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu.
All right, here we are, Wednesday night, December 4th. December 4th. Okay, good. Last week we had, I think, a rich discussion on the 3 higher trainings and this gradual path of liberation all the way up to fruition, and really beautiful suggestion around using our ethics to be that mindfulness practice, so unifying concentration, our ethics, and cultivating wisdom. So ethics, concentration, wisdom in this unified way. And then it took us all the way through to what it's like to be liberated from afflictions. That's a pretty rich discussion. We dove into that this last weekend down in Durango. So I had a full day retreat on that. And so I think it's ripening in a good way. And the next step is the next topic of what it is to be free. So, but before I dive into that, just wanted to check in with everybody, see if you had any questions or anything that came up from last week, or some of you I know attended the retreat. In that case, we'll soldier on, as they say. So the idea then in Buddhist teachings is to get to Nirvana. And there's a nice little section here in the text on just what that is. I believe I have them. Yeah. All Buddhists seek Nirvana. But what is it? In general, Nirvana is a state or quality of mind. It's not an external place, nor is it something reserved for a select few. Nirvana is attainable by each and every sentient being. Each and every sentient being. Nirvana is the ultimate nature of our minds, the emptiness of the mind that has been totally cleansed of obscurations. Wisdom directly realizes the emptiness of all phenomena, including the emptiness of the mind itself. This wisdom gradually purifies the mind of defilements. As it does so, the emptiness of that mind, which is one nature with that mind, is also purified. Purified state of the emptiness of the mind that is free from afflictive obscurations is an arhat's nirvana. The purified state of the emptiness of the mind that is free from both afflictive and cognitive obscurations is the non-abiding nirvana of a Buddha. So very slight difference between arhat and full Buddhahood. All produced things naturally cease because momentary disintegration is part of their nature. Their cessation doesn't depend on some other cause or condition that is a counterforce. So that's an interesting thing to really bear in mind. All produced things naturally cease because momentary disintegration is part of their nature. Their cessation doesn't depend on some other cause or condition that is a counterforce. I think we can look at our bodies and recognize that. However, the true cessation, that is the severance of affliction, does not occur in that way. It is not the natural disintegration of a thing when its causal energy ceases. True cessations come into existence due to wisdom. a counterforce that has been deliberately cultivated. Wisdom destroys ignorance. Let's make sure I said that. Wisdom destroys ignorance such that it can never arise again. It severs the continuity of ignorance completely. By meditating on the reasonings that refute inherent existence and establish a lack of inherent existence, we generate the Arya path, the wisdom that directly realizes emptiness. This wisdom apprehends the opposite of ignorance. Whereas ignorance apprehends phenomena as inherently existent, wisdom apprehends them as empty of inherent existence. In this way, wisdom uproots ignorance and its seeds. By the cessation and non-arising of ignorance, all other afflictions cease as well. Formative actions also cease, as do the remaining links. So everybody got that right? Not much to cover. Just stepping back. It's just really nice to know that we're already okay. We're just okay. The natural state of the mind, Buddha nature, it's okay. It's unaffected, doesn't need to be fixed. We're okay. And on top of that, we have some afflictions. And these afflictions that we, spent quite a bit of time recognizing how these patterns and habits and tendencies and attachments arise over time, condition us, come into being. And then this process is simply one of purifying, eliminating them. And what's beautiful to know is as they are eliminated, that's how Nirvana is achieved. It's not some other place. I don't need an e-ticket from Disneyland. I wonder how many people actually know what an e-ticket for Disneyland is these days, actually. Back in the day, they had different tickets for different levels of rides. And the e-ticket you could get on any ride. Yeah. But I digress. So what's being stated here is this opportunity that we have as we engage in this path of removing through the use of wisdom, really severing these causes that give rise to our conditioning. And they're making a point that it's really this wisdom itself that is the ultimate cause that gives rise to eliminating the conditioning, the obscurations, the afflictions. And it was made here that it's about understanding this empty nature of self and of mind, and this journey that we get to understand about ourselves. So there's this knowing. It's not just an education, but a knowing that gets that we get to experience rather than something we think about. But the thinking part can get us in the door. And this is where the opportunity we have to just start noticing the practice of understanding, where's your suffering coming from? Where am I struggling? Where is it that event? Is that person? Is that thing? Or is it how I'm relating to it? Oh, okay. Maybe it has something to do with how I'm relating to it. Or maybe I have this silly idea in my mind that it should be different than it is. I mean, that pops up in my head sometimes. Shouldn't be like this. And as though I know how it should be, which is kind of awkward, because I don't. And then we start to toy with how I have an experience based on how I'm attending to something. And if I attend to it a little differently, I have a different experience. Start realizing, oh, okay, a lot of this has to do with me. There's something to do with what's going on there, but a lot of it has to do with me. And so there's this journey then of cultivating a level of being able to engage in reality more accurately. Just understanding I'm always in a state of becoming. You're all in a state of becoming. We're all having a subjective experience. Everybody's listening to this teaching is hearing something a little bit different, receiving a little bit differently. And if we start to recognize that more often, and then in our day, you may notice that you're going to be a little more flexible. You might be able to have a little more resiliency, maybe shift your attitudes more quickly, and then you can start to notice how your experience changes just as you change how you're attending to it, the attitude you bring to it, the feelings that arise, how tight they are. And then we might notice that at moments that I was so overwhelmed have come and gone, and I'm still alive. And things that were so tight, I don't remember from 6 months ago. But boy, in this moment, it sure was a big deal, you know. And so this process then of getting to a place where we can bring that wisdom into this meditation, start to understand emptiness and this direct experience, I think it really needs to begin with how we live our lives. Making our life our vipassana practice, making our life our insight practice, noting throughout the day when I'm getting afflicted and questioning, okay, what's the cause of this? And just even becoming aware of that interplay. I may not be able to do anything about it. I might be overwhelmed. I might be having all kinds of emotional experience. But just having the opportunity to be aware that this is a temporary thing, that it is a subjective experience, and that it's caused through a lot of conditioning. Well, that's going to really have a door that cracks open just a little bit, and that is available, that we can start to understand that this experience I'm having is not some objective thing that's happening to me. It's really something that I'm engaged with subjectively, and there's an interplay. And if we can do that a little more often, then we kind of loosen the hold, a little bit, the tightness of the emotions, the reactivity, the frustrations, fears, or joy. We get to hold it a little more lightly, knowing that they're coming and going. But we're a part of it, it's meaningful. And the afflictions showing up are really the lessons to be learned, which basically the Dharma showing itself, going, oh, John, this is what you get to work on. He's still kind of hanging on to that, Okay. And then with that understanding, we can start to gain some direct experience instead of a thinking experience. We have to investigate it and try it out. We have to move it from the head down to an experience. But it does start with, does it make sense or not? Is there an objective world out there that's real, independent, measurable, or not? And so I have to investigate that. Or is everything I'm seeing kind of relative and subjective and, and interdependent, nothing independent out there? And so we think about, we talk about, we have nice discussions over coffee, honor the meaning of life and all that. And then we go outside and it gets very real, real quick. And you go, okay, well, let me start noticing that tightness, that the way it seems so independent and objective, and start working with that a little bit with an understanding of impermanence, interdependence, and constant state of becoming. And, life's fluid. And so one of the points that was in here was that everything that comes into being, it decays, right? The real interesting thing is, Buddhists will say when they always put down on a death certificate what the cause of death was, Buddhists would say it would be birth. That's the cause of death, right? We all have a terminal illness. It's called life. And so we start thinking about that. We start going, oh, okay, things are sort of gradually coming and going, and things, deteriorate. And so having the opportunity to observe this more and experience it more, don't shrink from it, but experience it. Then we can start to move from these intellectual concepts into some little taste of this emptiness, of these reified ideas and labels that I'm putting on people, places, things, and events. Okay, I already got a hand up. Thank God. Greta, I was thinking I was going to have to run out of breath talking.
I got you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You got me.
Thank you for sharing on that. I'm like, when I hear all this talk about like Nirvana and how like this emptiness talk concept, I don't know, it just, I don't understand it, to be honest. I haven't experienced it, which is why I don't understand like the emptiness thing. Like I kind of can grasp it, but experientially I'm just not there. And I guess, I mean, I want to stay on topic out of respect, like to just get through this text, you know what I mean? And
Get through this
whatnot.
damn text so we can talk about what we want to. Yeah, I get it.
But because I feel like I can get a little like off into left field, but I'll just say it anyway. Like, I'm struggling with like this, you know, practice of, taming the mind, training the mind so that I can like open up more space. But then having like that conditioning, and more specifically, like what I consider to be like CPTSD, like these violent internal emotional and physical reactions. And I don't project them out into the world anymore, but they are very real for me and they're getting better for sure. It's just, it's like a hell realm or something, you know what I mean? And I wonder if there were people who had CPTSD back in the time of the Buddha or something. Like, can you speak a little to like to people who have more extreme variations of this conditioning and whatnot, and how, does that mean I have a longer path towards attainment of freedom? Whatever. I mean, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
You might actually have a shorter one. Yeah. There's a wide range of individuals who've had, these traumas and conditioning in our lives, and pretty horrific. And so the big challenge is that we have this idea that, well, if I understood this, all that other stuff goes away. And technically that might be true, but in order to understand that, we need to work with where we are. And part of that is a much deeper willingness, right, to be where I am, and to be able to work and balance. Again, with Western psychology, we have Chris on here, who's a trauma counselor, and would give a much better answer regarding the balance around psychology. From a Buddhist perspective, your question being is that people have been injured and mentally, emotionally on deep levels since time beginning, and there are many stories also of people who've done horrific things, survived horrific things, and who have found their way. woke up. And often, just my own personal little experience is that many of the people who've gone through the worst, tend to have a real capacity to grow. One of our founders in the Mindful Life program is always talking about post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic, stress, and then because we have gone through those things, we have a real resiliency that's quite amazing. But our problem is, generally, I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling right now, and that is this big barrier from a Buddhist perspective. I'm speaking, and so that willingness to meet myself where I'm at, to get the kind of treatment and surroundings and support environment in a human, regular day-to-day life, and merging that as I learn these Buddhist teachings and finding a way that they come together, I think is very helpful. And as we've talked about many times, Jetsuma Tenzin will always say, we really need a healthy sense of self to let go of that self. So we just need to meet ourselves where we're at and know that, that reminder you and I have had many a conversation about is look at how far you've come, right? Look at how skillful you are. Look at just how insightful you are and how you work with that which arises. And, you're doing a great job. We just always want to accelerate the process, right? And not, sometimes recognize just how skillful you are and how far you already are on the path. That's what I've said. That you're welcome. Every time you share, you're talking about very skillful methods to work with stuff. I find it very inspiring. So in this text, we've really been working our way through this. And of course, we get to things like Nirvana, then we're in thin air and these concepts of emptiness. And I think it's helpful always to be practical and, work with what makes sense to us and not spend a lot of time trying to talk about things that are non-conceptual, because we're using concepts to talk about non-conceptual. Silly. But there are things that help us point to and understand and put us on a path to have that experience. And, one way that I think some people will really get emptiness pretty simply, I'll share. And maybe some of you will go, okay, that makes sense. I'm hoping. And makes sense to me. So you're all looking at me. I'm John. That's my label, John. Some people call me Chopal still. I'm John. We'll go with that. And there's a physical being that you're looking at, right? Fingers, hands, arm, everybody's. And so there's something solid here. There's this body, this big water sack with some skin. And but all of you are seeing a different John, right? So you're all seeing different John from your own perspective. So what's John empty of? I'm empty of all those qualities you're filling in about John. John's a nice guy. John's a jerk. John's kind of a funny guy. Well, that's probably factual, but I'm working my angles here. So And but all those the way you see me, right? You're filling it in based on your experiences and what you're seeing and how I'm coming in contact. So I'm empty. I don't have, there's nothing intrinsically, John, about me that you're seeing that is independent and separate and just is there. And so if I start to understand there's something there, but I'm filling in a lot of qualities and attributes about what I'm seeing. That thing is empty of those qualities, right? It's not in those. It's not in that person. It's not in this TV or this thing. It's, a cat is going to see a very different thing. Cat's probably not thinking that's a monitor, right? And someone who's never seen a monitor. And so if I start to understand emptiness in this way, I can start to see that I am filling in qualities and attributes to everything that I'm experiencing. It has a lot to do with me. It's not independent, separate. And so I'm empty of all those things that you're filling in and how you know them. That's not who I am. And we do it to ourselves, right? We have our own sort of qualities that will say, I'm this kind of person, I'm that kind of person. Except when you're not that kind of person, you're acting differently. I don't know. We still might say I'm not a morning person. And you have to get up in the morning. I don't know. Are you now a morning person? I'm not sure. But we just have all these ideas we put on ourselves. But they're not who we are. And they're temporary, subjective. And so we understand emptiness is that that everything we see and experience, they don't inherently have those qualities. So everything looks very independent and separate and like that. But it's not. Those qualities are not in those things inherent. They're empty of. Is that working for anybody? I don't see everybody on the screen. I only see a few faces. So Amy's giving me a little nod. Okay, nailed it. Awesome. And so, that's a beginning touchstone is starting to see, what's empty. Well, everything I experience is empty of the qualities I'm projecting into them. So there's something there. And so here's the other really neat piece is that as I change, I'm going to have different qualities I put into these things. I'm going to see people differently. And as I change karmically, how I experience you right off the bat is going to be a different experience. And so that's the whole journey about Buddhism. It's an inside job. As I change me, I have different karma and different wisdom and different understandings. Everything I experience becomes different. And then at some point, all of this becomes very different. It's really an inside job. And everything out there is helping me to do that. This is where I get to create good karma, good imprints, good understanding, virtuous activity, and learn about myself through my afflictions and this mind body thing that I'm lugging around. And as I learn about that, there's some labels and some things that are very helpful for me to understand in a very conventional way. And they work for a time, and then as we understand, we can let go of that label. The problem is we sometimes hang on to that label for a long time. I'm this kind of person, right? This kind of thing, right? And then got this whole sack of labels, I drag around all the time about who John is. And we don't recognize that you're none of that. And you're always becoming, and you're very fluid. And so wisdom will actually start to sever those labels, and then little bits at a time. I'm sure everyone here, on whether you're physically here, whether you're the Here and Now Center, or the Then and There Center, or anywhere online, that you've cut through a lot of misperceptions in your life already that don't rise up as afflictions anymore. You've learned things about yourself and your experience. And so that's how we liberate, little bits at a time. We sever old habits, beliefs, and confusions that used to make us angry, fearful, insecure. And we have less of them now. I feel like that makes sense. Till we get Kurt involved. All right, Kurt. Bring it on, baby.
Yeah, it makes sense. Intellectually, it makes sense. You know, I mean, it doesn't seem, having studied it for a while and read it and listened to you and listened to others, it makes sense, right? Two things. Experientially, I'm not even close. I don't know. I don't understand why within the intellectual knowledge isn't percolating down to the experiential knowledge so much. Except the few times that I've touched it, it's absolutely terrifying. And so my brain just not only do I not want to, not only am I seemingly incapable of experiential, but the few times I've done it, it's the last thing in the world I want to do. It's terrible. I remember once I called you about it. Was eating a peanut butter sandwich and it just was like I saw the groundlessness that this actually entails. And it's scary, right? And so how do you train, countless eons and the lamb rim, but I mean, it just seems like I don't know. I think it does. Even the intellectual knowledge helps, right? It
Yeah.
helps me from getting so wrapped around the axle because it kind of cuts off when somebody, it does help a lot actually, but I don't know if that's it. I don't know.
Can you give an
Maybe I'm
example
just striving.
How it helps?
What?
Like an example of how it helps the intellectual knowledge?
I can't get it. I can't be a victim. There's nothing being done. There's nothing out there that's being done to me, right? Everything that happens in the outside gets just comes in. It's all just colors and shapes, right? And it comes in, and then my consciousness does everything else to it, right? And that's a result of my karma and everything that I'm bringing, my conditioning, my habits, everything I'm bringing to it. And that helps, right? It helps when
knowing that helps incredibly. Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like, well, it's not Nirvana. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, it's like sometimes I wish I could just be angry at somebody. It'd be awesome. Anyway,
And we're the there and then off center.
we're there. That's it.
There
From
and
the there
then
and then.
off.
I'm glad you clarified all that for us. So there was an interesting statement in there that said, the intellectual is not making it down to the experiential, and that, a couple of times it has. I'm going to say that actually it has a lot more often. Every time that you have a feeling and an experience that you don't act on, that's an experience. You're touching it all the time. You're just not labeling it that way. Every time that going from what you just described as intellectual to that experience of not reacting to something, that's experiential wisdom. You're doing it all the time. It's not, I lost my whole body, and thank God I was hanging on a peanut butter sandwich. That'd be a bummer if you lost that. But it's not that we just into that big deep pool. It's much more, especially the more gradual, then we're going to be better prepared for when we have that other experience of just, non-awareness of the body. And that won't be so scary. And it's more of recognizing I'm having this wisdom, this direct experience of wisdom in my everyday life in a very conventional way, but I'm relating to it very differently, right? I'm relating to people as offering me something to learn. That's a very different experience as I interact with someone. And so once again, you're further along and you're giving yourself credit for it. And you're doing things experientially and not just intellectually. But the intellectual, so that's where my specific lineage again. Like we're big on analytical meditation. We talk about, we think about 3 wisdoms, we contemplate, then we get some realization and we sit with it. And so it's helpful. It's helpful to understand that, how I'm experiencing this has a lot to do with me. And if I can remember that in those moments, then I can have an experience. And it sounds like you do that quite often. And that saved me.
Kurt, I can totally relate because I had one of those experiences this past week when my daughter was really sick and dealing with doctors, and I pretty much had a small tantrum of wanting to be the victim. Like, I just want someone to take care of me. I'm tired of being the adult. I'm so, and I started crying. I started like having a mini fit. And then I'm like, this is happening because it's not turning out how I expect it to be turning out. This is why I'm suffering. And I had that moment and I was able to pull myself together and carry on. But I understand, like, you don't necessarily always want that wisdom because you do want to be a victim sometimes. And it's challenging.
Mm-hmm. You really cry.
Can you believe it?
We need to always meet ourselves where we're at. Yeah. And there's I've been listening to quite a few teachings by Khandro Rinpoche. It's just really good at this, and we want to hold ourselves to this. And it's just, not helpful. Much more helpful to recognize how far we've come, what we're already doing. And sometimes I don't know if I can, let's just say hypothetically, there's someone in this lesson tonight who used to describe a pouty chair. And a pouty chair, and you go sit in that chair and pout. And then when he was done, he was done. But I think that's a great chair. And sometimes we're going to be frustrated, sometimes we're going to scream, sometimes we just need to say stuff out loud. Many years ago, so a lot of years ago, probably 34, 30, I don't know, a lot of years ago, I was in therapy, and I probably should stay. And I'm there, and he's having me talk about my feelings. And he asked me how I feel about this or how I feel about that. And he goes, you're very articulate. Yeah, try to be precise. And why don't you just say what you freaking mean? And I couldn't, I couldn't, because I was so good at masking what I'm feeling through my articulate words. And, he basically had to work with me to just spit out what I felt, loudly and, and what I was feeling. I was struggling with it. But it was this journey of having me, let go of all of that, how I should be, and just saying it. And it was helpful to just say it out loud and be that way. And I think in Buddhism, we can be the same way, I know better and all that. I was listening to this person asking Khanda Rinpoche a question. And, you know, she's finding this and that, and she's asking this, and she responds. And Khanda Rinpoche, why don't you just ask me what you really want to ask me? Why don't you just say it, you know? And so sometimes we need our patty chair, and sometimes we just want to, you know, scream out loud. That's all right. And, you know, have a human experience. Blocking it with intellectualism or knowledge, all that is not helpful. You know, maybe I shouldn't be different. No, I'm feeling like this. Yeah. All right. No other hands there. So in this text, and we've this is what our third volume. Third volume.
Hey, John, there is a hand.
Oh, Ashley. Thank you. I like hands.
Well, I was just relating to what you were saying, because when something happens and I feel this reaction, I want to push it away. I feel like it's bad, like, oh, I shouldn't be reacting this way, and to step back and just kind of let it go and kind of let it pass is hard to do in the moment, because I get, I'm like pushing against it, and that just makes it worse.
Yeah. The analogy that they'll use is, it's like trying to block a stream, right? You try to block a stream, what's going to happen is going to overflow, right? So we keep stuffing or blocking. And so experience it. Now, we don't want to, hopefully say something we're going to regret and do all that, but, we do sometimes, right? Or act out. And so those are those times where it's much more just accepting the exasperation of the moment, if I'm not in a safe place I'm trying to avoid a cuss word. To lose you get stuff. And but sometimes it'll happen, right? And the thing is, this is where we learn. So the opportunity to accept, that, that's not happening. And then what's the healthiest thing to do in this moment? Is it to leave the room? Is it to scream into a bag or pillow, whatever we do? But the idea I shouldn't feel like this is not ever going to be helpful. No, I'm experiencing these feelings. Yeah, there's reasons for that. Valid. What do I do with it? That becomes the thing. Anybody remember what the sage advice when it's just totally overwhelming and anger? And I just feel like we're going to lose it and all the antidotes don't work. What the advice is?
Wood. Be like wood, yeah.
Be like wood. Still. Just don't do anything, because it will subside. And when it subsides enough, then we can do something. So I've got a lot of experience of being like wood.
I do like the pouting chair idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, get one of those. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna finger who it is. I'm gonna say. A couple hours in that, come back, we can talk to people. So we're at the top of the hour. So let me just take a peek, see, there's some other little piece in there that I was. Yeah, I mean, key point is Nirvana is not some place. It's really how we experience everything, really. And so it's really always about purifying, about cleansing, about cultivating wisdom. So it's not enough, right, that we just purify. As you purify, that's helpful. But purification in its in this sense is one where wisdom needs to cut through. So there's purification practices and there's virtue that we build and good karma. And that's all very important. That's the fertilizer that makes everything possible. But it needs to be conjoined with that wisdom of understanding causes and conditions and how I'm experiencing self and this experience. And so that's where more and more the willingness to feel things, to experience things, to note how things have changed, how we have grown, how things have shifted. That's all the wisdom path right there. And noting that, the things that I've done have created how I am, and what I'm doing now has created my future. And so that's really key. I'm creating my future right now. And what are the seeds that I'm watering? And so bringing that wisdom into our day-to-day is just going to be something that becomes more experiential, more habit forming. And this is gradual little journey. And liberations start happening little bits at a time. Old beliefs, old habits, old ways of being, fall aside a little bit. And we're able to do things that we used to not be able to do. Just going back to Kurt and Greta. You guys are doing things you never could do before, right? And honoring that. And you're well on your way. You're in this path. And underneath all this stuff, you're already okay. You're already okay. It's just the stuff that we get to learn. It's showing up for us. It's the work to do. So there's lots of little liberations. Not just the big one we're looking for. Little ones. And we should take some joy in those little ones. How much more capable we are. How much more effective we are relating to others. And, wow, we've come a long way. So that's all I have to say about that. Okay, well, let's just take a moment to be in this moment. What an incredible opportunity we've had to be here together with each other, supporting each other as we engage in our lives, trying to utilize these practices and skills that have been cultivated by many others, have been refined and have been offered to us. We've had an opportunity to meet the Dharma, to engage with it, to improve the qualities of our lives, and to be helpful to others. All of us have chosen on a Wednesday night to engage in these activities to help us cultivate our hearts and minds and be of benefit to others. That's an incredible amount of merit. We've earned our place here through the struggles we've endured, overcome. It's quite a bit of merit. So let us dedicate any and all merit and wisdom from our time together for the benefit of all beings. May they be free of suffering. For our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately recognize our Buddha nature and be able to be of ultimate benefit to all. And with that reflection, those who care to can join me in dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare